It doesn't get much more British or luxurious than the name Bentley. W.O. Bentley and his brother Horace had some really innovative ideas, and in 1919, when they released their first car, right from the start it was innovation in design and execution. From 4-valve per-cylinder heads to aluminum pistons to extravagantly wealthy men who wanted to race these cars, Bentley had a winning formula. Success at Brooklyn's hill climbs and the Indianapolis 500 led to amazing victories at the 1927, 28, 29, and 1930 Le Mans races. Now, while they've continued their racing success with cars like the Continental GT and the Speed 8, it's the coach-building excellence to emerge from the crew factory that we're going to be talking about today. Excellence in every sense of the word. Now for me, there's not much motoring supremacy when it comes to four-door saloon cars that elevates above where the Bentley Arnage is in my mind. Just the sheer amount of real estate it takes up in the car park declares, I've arrived. Now the 6 3/4 liter V8 was massaged by Volkswagen and also by Cosworth Engineering. Now the Arnage Red Label comes with a single giant turbo. In the later R and T versions, come with twin turbo 6 3/4 liter V8s. Now let's talk about power. Now there's a green label, and we don't really care about that because that only made 413 foot-pounds of torque. How about 616 for the red label, 645 for the T, and for the final version, 738 foot-pounds of torque. The Arnage actually shares a platform with the Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph. Now, if this was a Silver Seraph, this would be the only place you would find me. Is in the back, enjoying my lovely lunch on a picnic tray. But in a Bentley, it's kind of more about the driver. Now, when they launched this car, you could get it as a green label with a BMW engine or a red label. For our intents and purposes, we're only going to talk about the red label, the later R and T versions of the Arnage. Now, while you're enjoying your 700 foot-pounds of torque, you can do so sitting on top of 16 cowhides and multiple trees that make up the beautifully sculpted interior of this car. Now, I'm not exaggerating, like literally multiple trees. You know, there's just something about a car where the attention to detail, like these metal bezels around these gauge faces, are little polished jewels that someone polished by hand. You know, the hand workmanship in this vehicle, from the veneers to the shift knob to the seats, every stitch is hand stitched on this car. This isn't a car that's churned out in a day or 2 days. It takes 560 to 600 hours to produce a Bentley Arnage. Now, all of that hand craftsmanship, that old world workmanship, did come at a price. You know, these things were $200,000 to $300,000, even $350,000, depending on how you spec'd it out. Now let's talk about depreciation, because this car is now yours for the rock bottom price of between $25,000 and $50,000 for the absolute nicest one you can find. That's the bottom of the depreciation curve, boys and girls, and that's when you buy your Bentley. Enter the Bentley Continental GT, the only thing that could prevent you from buying a Bentley Arnage. Early Bentley Continental GTs have already kind of hit their rock bottom depreciation curve area, and so now it's kind of like, which one of these do I buy? So I got these two silver Bentleys together, and that's what we're going to talk about. So this is a little piece of advice that I haven't shared with a lot of people, but it's something I think is worth mentioning, and that is that anytime I'm looking at a car that's fairly pricey, in other words, I'm going to really have to invest to get that car, I'm going to hand wash the car first. Now, I've done this with private sellers or even with dealers, but nothing gets you close to a car like hand washing. Now, this level of scrutiny might seem almost like absurd to you, but I'm telling you, I've had numerous cars, and it's not like we're talking about a Concours Queen. These are cars that have been driven. So a lot of these cars are going to be represented by car dealers, and there's a lot of products out there that can cover imperfections. So when you get it home and wash it for the first time, there's this surprise factor of, oh wait a second, there's this scratch here and this stone chip here. And that's no fun because these are beautiful cars and you want to just enjoy the fact that you just bought a Bentley. Now, the Continental GT is quite a bit more sporting than the Arnage. You know, it fills a different place in the market. It's still an unbelievably attractive car, and fitted with a 6-liter W12 that puts out 550 horsepower and close to 500 foot-pounds of torque. You know, it's a twin-turbo unit, and the very first one that I drove actually had a chip tune on it that made an additional 100 foot-pounds of torque. Absolute beast. Absolute beast, and yet still so cosseting and beautiful on the interior. A Bentley Continental GT is still elevated far above where a Mercedes or an Audi of similar ilk would be. The Continental GT was actually the first car to benefit from the Volkswagen Audi group sort of union that happened when they acquired Bentley. Now, a lot of energy and engineering went into designing this car, and you'll see everything from the veneers to the Breitling clock is very unique and special to this car. You know, I was really worried because I was such a fan of Bentley that the Audi feel would come across and you would feel like a big Audi, but it doesn't. It feels like an all-wheel drive, slightly more sporting Bentley. So, a little bit of a change up in the Tim's Enthusiast garage style, but I had to bring some friends. I mean, you can't have a beautiful, luxurious ride like this and not have a crew with you. Yeah. So we've got fellow Bentley owners, and we're just going to be out for a nice British cruise. Like I said, it's a little bit wet today, so that's so British and so perfect. So as I said previously, for our purposes, we're not even going to consider the green label. The BMW engine's nice and probably a very reliable unit. It's not up to the task of moving this boat, giant Titanic-sized vehicle. And it also loses some of the allure of the 6 3/4 liter British motor. One of the hallmarks of a Bentley Rolls-Royce of this era, and pretty much they kept it through to the Conti GT, are these organ stops or organ pulls to stop and start the flow of air out of the vents. You'll notice too that the vents on this car are machined from a solid piece of metal, and that's just a thing of beauty. I love British craftsmanship like that. In terms of driving dynamics, this is a car where you want to enjoy the waft. You want to enjoy the fact that it just sort of floats across the road, but yet not in a disconnected way, but in a very cosseting way. It is very controlled. You know, the older Turbo R's kind of wallowed on the road, and this does have a very purposeful gait to it. Very powerful, very accurate, but a very comfortable cruiser. In a lot of ways, the Continental GT was very much a first for Bentley. It is a very sporting car. I mean, you could even consider one of these as an alternative to like our Maserati Grand Sport, or even a 911. Now, it's not gonna carve a canyon like a 911, but this car really has some sporting credentials. Now, if you've been following season 1 so far, you know I'm a huge Volkswagen and Audi fan. So this car being a particularly Volkswagen Audi byproduct, or parts bin car as some people would call it, is no bad thing to me. They certainly brought along with it some serious Teutonic engineering. And one of the things about this car that's so amazing is it really does feel like a British car and a German car at the same time. You know, you have a 200-mile-an-hour top speed, actually a little bit over with a tune, and still cosseted in that sort of British way that the Germans were never really able to do. This car actually has the H&R lowering module on it, and as you can tell from the, even this camera shot right now, is it's still a very supple ride. And to manage that with a car that's as heavy as this, that has as much power as this, it's pretty impressive. So even at highway speeds, this is still hushed and quiet, which, how could you have a Bentley that doesn't have those attributes, right? I mean, you have to. So one of the things for me, though, that really stands out about this car is that it's a union of, yes, two car companies, one German, one English, but everything works. The button and switchgear quality is as good or better than prior to the Volkswagen Audi Group merger. It's really taken them to another level. Now, there are certain things that you can definitely say are 100% Bentley. Things that are made out of solid metal. You wouldn't see that so much in a Volkswagen Audi car, primarily because they would be concerned with saving weight, or they would want to use the lightest alloy conceivable. But everything that you touch inside this car feels Bentley. When you're in the car, you know you're in a Bentley. And that's something that I think really would have been a loss, to kind of lose that heritage. And, you know, plus when you're charging a few hundred to $400,000 for a car, it better feel nice. So when Bentley announced the Continental GT, it was a little bit different than every Bentley before it. Most notably in that it was all-wheel drive. Most Bentleys had been rear-wheel drive and come with the 6.75 liter or 6 3/4 liter V8 with adequate power. This Bentley had more than enough power and all the traction to put it down. So in terms of buying advice on these cars, number one is don't buy the cheapest car. Yes, there are $17,000 Arnages and $28,000 Continental GTs. Rule them out. Second is have an independent that is able to service these cars. If you don't, you should think twice about owning any exotic. Checklist: the veneers on the Arnage, head gaskets on early Arnage, later R&T cam, and the air suspension on the Continental GT all should be areas you check out. As I've said before, styling is a bit subjective. Honestly, I love both of these cars, but for like completely different reasons. The Arnage is pure presence, pure drama, pure theater. The Continental GT is svelte and sporting. So which one do you prefer? One's got 550 torque, one's got 616. They couldn't be more different. Even though they're close in power figures, the W12 revs and the 6 3/4 liters can't be bothered. It just makes mountains of torque. Now, in terms of interior, I don't think it gets any better or any more bespoke than the Arnage's interior. But the Audi-Volkswagen union really brought a level of quality to the veneers and to the leather that eclipses the Arnage. So in terms of interior quality, I think it's very much an easy pick to say the Continental GT wins. You know, both of these cars ride and handle pretty much exactly like you think they would, which is to say, very well developed, very well refined. You know, one is a cruiser, one is sporting, and it really comes down to which serves your needs better. You know, really, you could make a pretty strong case for both of these cars, which leads me to my conclusion. I will not hide my love affair with the Arnage. I absolutely love that car. And originally I came in thinking I would just extol the Arnage. But the Continental GT is an amazing vehicle and really won my heart. I don't think it would be wrong to have both of these in your garage, and for the price point, you could do so. Typically, the same manufacturer doing the same car from similar eras, you would never do that. But these cars are so different, the personalities are so distinct, that having them both just makes sense. So as you can hear, the auction has started, so let's head on in and check out some of the action.
All done? Be the high bidder now. $1,075,000 in the back. Thank you. $1,014 is the Cosworth powered Mercedes-Benz 190.